Demetrius Andrade becomes a two-weight world champion with a 12-round unanimous decision over Walter Kautondokwa for the WBO middleweight world title. This was a vacant belt on the line after Billy Joe Saunders vacated following a doping test controversy. Let's just call it that. Andrade has been inactive for several years because of promotional difficulties, but he recently signed with Eddie Hearn and DAZN, and I felt going into this fight that Andrade would be energized by that. I think I mentioned it in one of my videos about Andrade taking on Saunders. I expected Andrade to be energized by this whole Matchroom deal and DAZN deal, and indeed he was. This was the sharpest and most energized I've seen Andrade in a boxing ring for a very long time. You might remember Andrade fighting Jack Koke in Germany a couple years ago, and Andrade looked a shell of himself in that fight. He looked slow by his standards. He looked labored. If you saw Andrade against Koke, you would not have been impressed if that was your first time watching him. You would have thought to yourself, this guy ain't gonna shake up the middleweight division. Like, this guy's nothing special at all if you saw him in a Koke fight. But those of you who had seen him in much better form prior to facing Koke, you would have known what I knew, which is that Andrade is an extremely talented fighter. Very fast, very slick, long arms. You know, I was saying several years ago that one of the people I would actually pick to beat Floyd Mayweather at 154 pounds is Demetrius Andrade. Yeah, I was saying this years ago. This was when it was unclear whether Mayweather was going to retire or not. And people were talking about him taking on the young lions and young guns, maybe at 154, etc. And the reason people were having this discussion, obviously, is because Mayweather touts himself as the best ever, the greatest of all time. And when you're making massive claims like that, you're going to be measured against other candidates for greatest of all time. And you're going to be expected to achieve similar things to what they achieved or surpass what they achieved in terms of the quality of opposition they took on and the risks that they took. So that's why people were saying things like that. But at the time I was saying, look, I think this Andrade guy has a very good chance of beating Mayweather at 154. That's how highly I rated Andrade. But as I say, his career stagnated for a while because of promotional difficulties. But now that he's with Hearn, he's energized again. He's in a happy place. And he put in a performance to reflect that. He came out for the first few rounds and he was absolutely electric. This wasn't like a Billy Joe Saunders or a Mayweather or a Guillermo Rigondeaux, or even to a lesser extent, Tevin Farmer, where they come out and they're slick, but are not particularly exciting with it. Now, some people might take exception to what I said when it comes to Tevin Farmer. They say, oh, Tevin Farmer's performance was exciting. But I don't know. I beg to differ on that. I mean, it wasn't terribly boring and he did get the stoppage, but I think Andrade is a much more watchable fighter when he's in full flow, as he was in the early rounds against Kautondokwa. He was in full flow, sliding out of the pocket left and right, letting combinations go. You know, he's not a pot shotter, Demetrius Andrade, when he's in full flow like this. He's not a pot shotter. He's a guy who let his hands go. There was shades, and I'm going to sound a little Mick Hennessy here, there was shades of Pernell Whitaker about Andrade and actually about Tevin Farmer a little bit. There was shades of Pernell Whitaker there. Obviously, these guys are not as slick as Whitaker. Whitaker is the king of slickness when he was at his best, in his prime. But Whitaker was a slick southpaw who would let his hands go. He wasn't a pot shotter. And that's what we saw here against Andrade, obviously a much bigger guy than Whitaker. He was moving around, letting his hands go, punches from different angles, body shots, head shots, very fast hands. It was just really great to watch against Kautondokwa. Obviously, Kautondokwa played into Andrade's hands by being an upright, stationary target who didn't have much about him from a technical point of view. He's just a big, strong middleweight coming forward, hoping to get close enough to land a short right hand or a left hook or an uppercut. So very rudimentary fighter, Kautondokwa. But he had plenty of heart, tried his best, and a very tall guy as well. It's not the first time that Demetrius Andrade has fought a tall middleweight, but Kautondokwa's got to be up there in terms of the tallest, well, not tall, just tall middleweight, even tall light middleweight, sorry. Andrade's fought tall light middleweights before. It wasn't the first time he's fought a tall fighter in the professional ring. Kautondokwa's height, I believe, is listed at, I think, 6 foot or 5'11", which is way off. That's what it's listed at on BoxRec. Kautondokwa, I would guess, is probably around 6'2", and Demetrius Andrade, I believe, is 6 feet tall. On BoxRec, it says Andrade's 6'1". If he's 6'1", then Kautondokwa must be 6'3". So I'm going to say Andrade's about 6 feet tall, and Kautondokwa is about 6'2". All right, so he's a pretty tall middleweight. Kind of like Andy Lee. He's around that height. So, yeah, a crude opponent in Kautondokwa. Well, let me not say crude, because it's not like he was looking like a Marcus Maidana in there, but a one-dimensional opponent, I think, is a better way to describe Kautondokwa. Very one-dimensional, and that made it easy for Andrade. Andrade actually injured his shoulder. I thought it was his hand. During the fight, Andrade slowed down in the second half, and he stopped trying to knock Kautondokwa out, because he was trying to knock Kautondokwa out, and he did drop him several times in the fight. And before I go on, I do have to mention the first knockdown of this fight, which I believe was in the first round, towards the end. Demetrius Andrade landed a punch while Kautondokwa was on the floor. Very, very naughty. All right, that's a very, very naughty thing to do. And he's very lucky that at the bare minimum, he didn't have points deducted for hitting the opponent while the opponent was down like that. And in fact, if he wasn't in, well, Boston's not his hometown, but it's his home region. If he wasn't in his home region as the main event headline act, then there might have been serious repercussions for Demetrius Andrade hitting Kautondokwa when he was down like that. But be that as it may, he was in control anyway. And yeah, he proceeded to put a beating on Kautondokwa. There was another knockdown, I think it was the second knockdown, which took place, I believe, in the second or third round, which was actually a double knockdown. Andrade wasn't hurt at all, but throwing the shot that he threw, which caught Kautondokwa and dropped him, placed him slightly off balance, and Kautondokwa's shot that landed simultaneously with Andrade's shot sent Andrade down, and Andrade's glove touched the canvas. So it was technically a double knockdown, although Andrade wasn't hurt at all and Kautondokwa was. So the fight continued. There were a couple more knockdowns, but as I say, after the fourth knockdown, I think there was 4. After the fourth knockdown, Andrade appeared to hurt something, and we later found out it was his shoulder. Some eagle-eyed people observed that he was actually having ice put on his shoulder in between rounds. I didn't observe that. I guess I wasn't paying attention in between rounds. But yeah, I thought it was his hand, because I was wondering, I was putting on social media at the time, typing, why is Andrade not trying to knock Kautondokwa out anymore? I think something has happened. He's not letting his left hand go with the same ferocity as he was earlier on in the fight. And indeed, it was his shoulder rather than his hand. So we hope Andrade's shoulder makes a full recovery. We hope it's nothing too serious. He said that it was actually bothering him all week during training camp. So it wasn't a fresh injury from the fight. It was kind of an existing injury that flared up during the fight. So yeah, we hope he can recover from that. All in all, a good performance from Andrade. You couldn't have really asked any more from him, especially given the fact that he injured his shoulder. It was virtually a perfect performance. And again, very energized. You can say the opposition was poor. That's a fair critique of this fight. You can say the opposition was poor, though we haven't seen Kautondokwa in there against any of our top middleweights, so we don't know how poor he is. But as I say, Andrade couldn't have done any more than he did. He did as best he could after sustaining that injury and before sustaining the injury. So I think it was a good performance. Very energized, very fast, very slick, and yeah, entertaining. So hats off to Demetrius Andrade. He's the new WBO middleweight champion. I saw some Billy Joe Saunders fans online saying Andrade would have been in trouble if he was in there against Billy Joe. I completely disagree. I think Billy Joe would have been in trouble, to be honest with you. I said all along that Andrade would be by far the toughest fight that Billy Joe's ever had in his career. And I stand on that. Even now, I think Andrade would be by far the toughest fight Billy Joe's ever had in his career. He's never fought nobody like Andrade who can move like that. with long arms like that, who's also a southpaw. He's never fought nobody like that. You think Andy Lee can move like Andrade? You think Andy Lee is as talented as Andrade? I'm telling you, he's nowhere near that talented. He's nowhere near that fast and slick with those long arms that Andrade's got. What, he's got like a 74-inch reach or something? I don't know what Andy Lee's is. Maybe Lee's is longer, but Lee don't use his reach as effectively as Andrade does. You know, Andrade just a more talented fighter all round than somebody like an Andy Lee. And the Andy Lee fight was relatively close with Billy Joe Saunders. So I think Billy Joe Saunders is going to have a hell of a tough time against Andrade. You know, a hell of a tough time. And, I mean, you look at Billy Joe Saunders against Akavov. A lot of people think Billy Joe Saunders lost that fight. You think Akavov is even in the same universe as Andrade? As a fighter, he's definitely not. And Akavov, a southpaw, who was faster than Billy Joe in the early rounds. And I know Billy Joe wasn't in great shape for that fight. I completely acknowledge that. But Akavov is no Demetrius Andrade. That's what I'll say. So, yeah. Andrade is still leaving the door open to a fight against Billy Joe. And so is his promoter, Eddie Hearn. They're saying, yeah, that fight can happen. Maybe we'll fight Billy Joe next. It's going to be on Andrade's terms, obviously, as the first fight was because, well, from a location point of view, the first fight was on Andrade's terms because they settled. I don't think it went to purse bids. It was initially a purse bid, but then they settled before, it went to purse bid, sorry. And Billy Joe agreed to take a massive amount of money. Apparently he was going to get over $1 million. So he's definitely pissed that the fight didn't go ahead because he was about to be financially compensated far greater than he's ever been for any fight in his career previously. So Billy Joe's pissed for that reason, particularly after getting $100,000 fine from the British Border Boxing Control. But if he does get the opportunity to fight Andrade, he's not going to get that kind of payday, I would imagine, because he's no longer champion. He relinquished. Andrade's got the belt. The fight will be in Andrade's backyard. So Billy Joe's going to have to fight for a smaller amount than before. And Andrade's now got ring time. It's Billy Joe who would have been out of the ring longer. If they fight next, I mean, let's say Andrade's shoulder injury is relatively minor. Actually, Billy Joe could fight in the meantime, to be fair. But still, Andrade's got ring time now. He's going to be a lot sharper if he fights Billy Joe, let's say in 5 months' time, than he would have been now. You know, than he was this time around against Kautondokwa. So I think that's a very, very tough fight for Billy Joe. And I don't know whether I'd pick Billy Joe, to be honest with you. Billy Joe's good. Billy Joe's slick. But Andrade does what Billy Joe does with longer arms, more height, more punching power. Yeah, he does what Billy Joe does with more punching power. One thing I'll say about Billy Joe doesn't take as many risks as Andrade. At least not as Andrade took against Kautondokwa. All right? And because of that, Billy Joe maybe doesn't make as many mistakes. Because Andrade will take risks and he will make mistakes and he will leave himself open, but his reflexes are quick, so he pulls away from shots when he leaves himself out of position. But would he box so gung-ho against Billy Joe Saunders? I doubt it. Not unless he found it very easy in there against Saunders, and then he might start trying to let combinations go and what have you. But I would expect him to box a more conservative fight against Billy Joe. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And also the possibility of Andrade facing off against Gennady Golovkin, because he talked about Golovkin. He's been calling Golovkin out for years now, Demetrius Andrade. In fact, Andrade was willing to step up and fight Golovkin when the Canelo rematch initially fell through. You guys remember that? When Golovkin went and fought Vanes Martirosyan instead? Demetrius Andrade was one of the fighters who stepped up and said, I'll step in. I'll take on Golovkin instead. All you got to do is make the call. We're there. Golovkin declined to make that call. He's also been calling out the Charlos for years. Demetrius Andrade's had this running beef with the Charlos for a long time now. Been calling them out. And Canelo as well is another fight which Demetrius Andrade is interested in. They're both on the same network now, and Eddie Hearn says that a fight between Andrade and Canelo is inevitable because of the fact they're on the same network. Because Canelo's going to need opponents, right? And as long as Andrade keeps hold of his WBO middleweight world title, then that's going to be a viable opponent for Canelo, as long as Canelo's at middleweight. So we'll see. The future at the moment looks very bright for Andrade. And I think he's a very talented fighter. And at 30 years old, it's good that this opportunity has come when it has for Andrade. It obviously would have been better it coming earlier, but he's still within the window of his prime years, in my opinion. So it's good that the opportunity finally came here to showcase his talent with money behind him on a burgeoning platform in the zone with, a lot of potential good fights in the future. So let me know what you felt about Demetrius Andrade's performance against Walter Kautondokwa. Eddie Hearn says he wants to bring Kautondokwa back because of the fact that he shows heart. And again, this is an example of how losing a fight is not the end of the world. There are promoters and broadcasters who are happy to bring you back if you lose a fight, as long as you try your best. As long as you give a good account of yourself, as long as you show heart or something, then television networks, promoters, they'll bring you back. It's when you go in there and you stink the joint out. You don't try your best. You quit, or whatever the case may be. That's when networks and promoters might turn their backs on you. But if you go in there and try your best and make a good go of it, show some heart, then you can get more fights off the back of that. Kautondokwa was never in this fight. I mean, the scores were unbelievably wide. And they were accurate. It's not like these are wide scores that were inaccurate. No, these were accurate scores. 120 and 104, 120 to 104 twice and 119 to 105. These were accurate scorecards, all right? And that shows you how uncompetitive the fight was. But Kautondokwa kept getting up, kept marching forward, kept trying to land a big shot, showed no quitting him whatsoever. And promoters and broadcasters look at that and say, okay, he's going to show heart. That means he's going to be entertaining. So even if we put him in another fight we think he's going to lose, it's going to be a spectacular loss, right? Yeah, it's cynical the way boxing promoters think. They're not your friends. They're looking at what money they can make out of you. They're looking at how entertaining you're going to be in the ring. But that, as a fighter, gives you an opportunity. Yeah? It gives you an opportunity. Just because they think you're going to be entertaining next time, it doesn't necessarily mean you will. Maybe you'll go in there and give a boxing masterclass and beat one of their guys, who knows. Anyway, let me know what you feel about everything I've talked about in this video. Demetrius Andrade arrives in the middleweight division. He's now a major player. He's got the zone behind him. Let me know how you feel, people. It's happening. I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.